Gyronix.
In today's lecture, we'll discuss the theory of operation of a diode. And this will be our topic outline. First, we will discuss the basic construction of the unbiased diode. We also have the biased diode. So we have two ways to bias a diode. That can either be reverse bias or forward bias. And also some of the parameters of the diode and the operation of rectifier circuits. So we have two general types of rectifier circuits. We can have half-wave rectifier and full-wave rectifier. So let's get started. And first is the unbiased diode. Diode is also called PN junction due to its construction, and this is how you construct a diode. You have a P-type material and an N-type material, so you put them together side by side, then you have your diode. Okay? But actually, the PN junction is the border between the P-type and the N-type material. So this thin line here, this is the PN junction, so that white line. Then the terminal in that P-type material is called the anode, and the terminal in the N-type material is called the cathode. And it is sometimes called a junction diode or just diode, and this is the schematic symbol of the diode. We are using this one in designing our electronic circuits, so take note of this symbol. And the di in the diode stands for 2, and that is the 2 electrode, okay, the anode and the cathode. So it is called electrode or terminal, either way. Next, we will discuss what is a depletion layer. So again, to construct a diode, we need a P-type material and an N-type material. So you put them together side by side, you have your diode. And as you can see in the figure, the P-type material, there are more holes compared to electron. And in the N-type material, there are more electrons compared to holes. What happens now is that some of the electrons near this PN junction will diffuse to the P region. Electrons are negative, right? So negative will be attracted to positive. And this is called recombination. So wherein the electrons and holes combine. The same happens with the P region. So the holes in the P region will be attracted to N region, which is negative. So it will continue this process of recombination until it reaches what we call equilibrium. So what is an equilibrium? Equilibrium happens when there are enough electrons, let's say in the P region, so that will push back this electron in the N region. So this prevents further diffusion. Take note, they are like charges, so they will repel each other, right? So this one will prevent further diffusion. The same happens with the holes. Holes are positive, it will also repel the holes in that P region. So it will push back, preventing them from diffusing to the N region. And this is what we call an equilibrium. And this created what we call a depletion layer. Depletion layer is, in that region, there are no more free electrons. Okay, so it's like a neutral region. Okay, so there's no flow of electron in that region since the electrons and holes recombine, okay, in that region. And it's creating a barrier, or technically we call it a barrier potential. So when we say barrier, that is something that prevents something from going through. In this case, it will prevent the electron from diffusing from the N region to the P region. Of course, barrier can be broken. So in this case, it can be broken if, for example, your semiconductor is made using germanium. So if you have 0.3 volts, so that barrier will be broken and electrons can flow. For silicon, you need 0.7 volts. And what is this 0.3 volts and 0.7 volts? That is how we bias our diode. Okay, so bias actually simply means you are applying a power source. And first, we have reverse bias configuration. So take note of this orientation of the terminal. So this is how we apply the reverse bias configuration. The negative terminal of your power source is connected to the positive of the diode, which means positive will be attracted to negative. So it will pull all the holes in the P region to the negative side. So the same happens at the positive terminal of the power source and negative. So positive and negatives, this negative will be attracted to positive. And this causes the depletion layer to be widened. At this state, our diode now acts like an insulator. So there's no current flow in this reverse bias configuration. Okay, so ideally there's no current flow, but of course, in actual application, so there is some reverse saturation current. So this reverse saturation current is due to the minority carriers of both P-type and N-type material. And other current that flows in this configuration is the surface leakage current. So this one is due to the impurities and imperfections during the manufacturing of silicon crystal. Okay, so but ideally there's no current flow in this reverse bias configuration. So take note of this configuration. You can reverse bias this diode, but it has a limit of how much voltage you can apply in a reverse manner. So this is the breakdown voltage. Typically, it is 50 volts, or it depends on the datasheet of the diode. Let's say the datasheet states that the diode has 50 volts breakdown voltage. If you increase the voltage to greater than 50, your diode will be destroyed. Okay, so take note, this is one of the parameters of the diode, okay, the breakdown voltage. And next is the forward bias configuration. So we have here our diode. So in forward bias configuration, the positive of our power source is connected to the positive of our diode. So this one will push this positive side, right? So they are both positive, so they will repel each other. So the same with your negative of the diode and the negative of your power source. So both negative will repel. And this causes your depletion layer to become narrower. But there's a requirement. Your power source, okay, must be greater than the barrier potential. So it depends on the type of semiconductor. So if this is made using germanium, so you need 0.3 volts and above. And for silicon, you need 0.7 volts and above. Okay, so this is the forward bias configuration. And in this configuration, our diode now acts like a conductor, which means the electrons can flow from negative to positive. Okay, so take note of this configuration. This is the forward bias configuration. And next is the some of the parameters of the diode. So we have first the temperature. Of course, the ambient temperature is the temperature of the surrounding air. And the junction temperature is the temperature of the diode itself. Of course, the diode temperature is much hotter compared to the ambient temperature. So it's greater than the ambient temperature. And this temperature has an effect in the barrier potential of the diode. So we have this rate of change. This simply means that the barrier potential decreases by 2 millivolts per degree Celsius increase in temperature. So let's have an example. So assuming a barrier potential of 0.7 volts, so this must be a silicon diode. So at an ambient temperature of 25 degrees Celsius, that is room temperature, determine the barrier potential of a silicon diode when the junction temperature is 100 degrees Celsius, 0 degrees Celsius, and 50 degrees Celsius. So let's start with 100 degrees Celsius. So this is the given formula. So this symbol delta, which means change. So you simply find the difference between the initial voltage and the final voltage. The same with the change in temperature, that is the initial temperature and the final temperature. So for example, in our case, we increase the temperature from 25 degrees to 100. So that is the change in temperature. This is the unknown value. So we don't know what this final voltage is. This is the voltage if the diode is increased to 100 degrees Celsius. And of course, the 0.7, so this is the initial voltage. So 100 minus 25, okay, this is 75 degrees. So next is we can cross multiply the denominator, and this is negative 0.7, we can transfer to the right side. So it will become positive. So the next equation would be the voltage at 100 degrees Celsius is negative 2 millivolts times 75 degrees Celsius plus 0.7. And that will give us 0.55 volt. So this is the barrier potential if the diode is increased from 25 degrees to 100 degrees Celsius. Okay. So next is we decrease from 25 to 0 degrees. Right, the same formula. So now our change is from 25, we decrease it to 0. So again, this is the unknown voltage. So 0 minus 25 is, of course, negative 25. So cross multiply. Then transfer this negative 0.7 to the right side. So the next equation would be negative 2 millivolts times negative 25 plus 0.7. And that will increase our barrier potential to 0.75 volts. Okay, so next is the 50 degrees Celsius. So the same formula. Now the change in temperature is from 25 to 50. Okay, so that will give us, of course, 25 degrees Celsius. Cross multiply. So the same process. So this negative will transfer to the right side. So we have negative 2 millivolts times 25 plus 0.7. So the barrier potential at 50 degrees Celsius is 0.65 volt. Okay, so this is how you calculate the barrier potential if you change the temperature in the diode. And take note that the changes in temperature of the diode is natural, since while you are using the diode in the circuit, over time it will generate heat, so it will become hotter over time, and in return it will decreases its barrier potential, so based on the rate of negative 2 millivolt per degrees Celsius. And next is the reverse saturation current. So this one, the higher the junction temperature, the greater the saturation current. So which means they are directly proportional. And the reverse saturation current doubles for every 10 degrees increase in temperature. So take note of this. 100% means it doubles the value every 10 degrees. And for the temperature less than 10 degrees, it will only increase by 7%. Okay, so take note of this rate. So again, every 10 degrees, it doubles. Every degree, it will increase only by 7%. And let's have an example. So we have a silicon diode with a saturation current of 5 nanoampere at room temperature, which is 25 degrees Celsius. So what is the saturation current at 100 degrees Celsius and at 80 degrees Celsius? Okay, so first at 100 degrees Celsius, so the initial value at 25 degrees, we have 5 nanoampere, right? So again, in every 10 degrees, it doubles the saturation current. So which means from 25, if I will add 10, which is 35 degrees, so that 5 will double. 5 times 2 is 10 nanoampere. So another one, 35 plus 10, 45 degrees. So I will double that 10 times 2, okay, 20. So another 10 degrees increased, 45 plus 10 is 55. So it will double the 20, it becomes 40. So I think you get now the point. So another plus 10, 65. Okay, double that 40, we have 80. So another 10, 75. Double that 80, 160. So another 10, we have 85. So double that 160, we have 320. So another 10, 95. So double that 320, we have 640 nanoampere. This time, I cannot add 10. Since if I'm going to add 10, it will be 105. So it is over with the requirement or the required temperature. Okay, so this one doubles every 10 degrees increase in temperature. Next is I will increase it into 1 only. Let's say 96 degrees Celsius. So plus 1 only from 95. So if it is less than 10, it will increase only by 7%. So that 640 nanoampere, I will add the 7% of that. 7% is 0.07, right? So this part here is the 7%. But there's a better way. This 640 times 0.07, then I will add to 640 is also equivalent if I'm just multiplying this 640 by 1.07. So I will have the same result, which is 684.8 nanoampere. So I will use that 1.07 factor. So another 1 degree Celsius, 97. So I will multiply this by 1.07. It will give me 732.7. So the same, 97 plus 1, 98. So multiply by 1.07. Okay, so we have 784.0 nanoampere. So another 199 multiplied by 1.07. So we have 838.9. And the last one, at 100 degrees Celsius, so 838.9 times 1.07 is 897.6 nanoampere. So this is the reverse saturation current at 100 degrees Celsius. Take note, this part here, when we increase less than 10, we increase it only by 7%. And with this concept, we can derive some formula. So what is this pattern? We have 5 from the start. You multiply it by 2, we have 10. And there times 2, we have 20 times 2, 40 times 2, 80, and so on. Okay, so what is that pattern? So that is the binary pattern with this formula 2 raised to n, right? Okay, so take note of this formula. We will use this in our next example. And this one, we simply multiply it by 1.07. So this is the factor. Okay, so every current, the previous one, we multiply it by 1.07. Again, that is increasing the current by 7%. Okay, let's apply this concept here. So how we got this one? We have 5 nanoampere, that is the starting current. So this 7 is the 2 raised to n. So why 7? We start at 0. This is 1, this is 2, this is 3, 4, 5, 6, and this is the 7th number. That's why we have that 7 as an exponent. So this 5 nanoampere times 2 raised to 7 will give me 640 nanoampere. Okay, so that's the formula. So let's apply that in our problem. Okay, so let's try again in 100 degrees Celsius using that formula. But first, we need to determine the change in temperature. Take note, we increase our temperature from 25 to 100 degrees. So that change is 75 degrees Celsius, right? And the 75, we can rewrite this as 7 times 10, that is 70, plus 5 times 1, that is 75. So why 10? Okay, so 10, since in every 10 degrees increase in temperature, we double the current. So we double it 7 times, right? So in that will be our formula. So which means at 95 degrees, so why 95? So 25, I increase to 70. So 25 plus 70, that is 95 degrees. So at 95 degrees, from 25, we double it 7 times. That's why we have this exponent. And the initial value is 5 nanoampere. And this will give me 640 nanoampere. After that, I will increase it by 1 degree, but 5 times until I reach 100 degrees Celsius. Take note, if less than 10, we increase it by 1.07. So this 5 is, we increase it 5 times. And from the value of 640 nanoampere, it will give me 897.6 nanoamperes. The same result when we do it manually. And this time, we are using the formula. And we can apply the same formula to calculate for the 80 degrees Celsius. So let's do that. And the same steps, first we need to determine the change in temperature. So we increase our temperature from 25 to 80. So 80 minus 25 is 55 degrees Celsius. And this 55 degrees Celsius can be written as 5 times 10, right? 50 plus 5 times 1, which is 55. So again, we increase our temperature from 25 5 times. So 25 plus 50, right? So which means at 75 degrees Celsius, your current starting from 5 nanoampere, okay, you increase it 5 times, or you double it 5 times, and that will give you 160 nanoampere. So next, I will increase my current from 75 degrees to 80 degrees by 1 degree every time. So I increase it 5 times, right? Okay, so which means our equation will be 1.07 exponent 5. And this one, initial value is 160 nanoampere. So which means at 80 degrees Celsius, the reverse saturation current is 224.4 nanoampere. Okay, so this is the solution for this exercise. Okay, next parameter is the surface leakage current. This was quite simple. This is just Ohm's law. So we have this formula. Resistance is equivalent to voltage over current. SL stands for, of course, surface leakage. So R is resistance, I is current, of course, V is voltage. So let's have an example. So if the surface leakage current is 2 nanoampere, For a reverse voltage of 25 volts, what is the surface leakage current for a reverse voltage of 35 volts and of 100 volts? So let's have first the resistance value. We're simply using the Ohm's law. So we know that at 25 volts, okay, this one, so there's a current flow of 2 nanoampere. So we simply divide that one using Ohm's law, since ideally, Ohm's law states that the resistance is constant. So we have the surface leakage resistance, which is 2.5 gigaohms, and this is constant, it doesn't change. Okay, so which means at 35 degrees, so we can have the same formula, Ohm's law, but this time we will use this value, the 12.5 gigaohms. Giga is 10 raised to 9. So at 35 degrees, so by Ohm's law, I will get the current, which is 2.8 nanoampere. So the same applies with 100 volts. So we have the same resistance, which is constant. Okay, at 100 volts, so the same resistance, 12.5 giga times 10 raised to 9. So by Ohm's law, that will give me my surface leakage current, which is 8 nanoampere. Okay, so this is a simple exercise. Okay, next, let's proceed with the operation of rectifier circuits. First, we have half-wave rectifier. So familiarize this circuit. So this is the half-wave rectifier. Let's analyze how this works. We have the input voltage, this one. This is AC, okay, alternating current. And we have output voltage. So this one, this is the voltage we can see at this resistor. Okay, so since this is AC, it will alternate its voltage from positive to negative. So let's say we have positive at positive half cycle. If you remember the basic construction of a diode, this one is anode. So anode is positive, right? This one is cathode, that is negative. So you have here positive. Okay, positive and positive will push the depletion layer, which means it is forward bias. So if it is forward bias, it will allow the current to flow, which means you have an output voltage. Okay, so whatever your input, that will be your output. Okay, so the next one, at negative half cycle, since this is AC, alternating current, which means it has positive voltage and negative. Okay, this time, take note again, this is what? Positive, this is negative. Now you have negative here. Okay, so it will attract, okay, that depletion layer. This diode states now is reverse bias. If it is reverse bias, there's no current flow, or you can visualize it as an open circuit, so which means there's no output, right? So current cannot pass to this open wire. Okay. So what's next? The input will have its positive cycle again, and this will forward bias your diode, the same concept, and you have your output, right? So at negative side, so it will reverse bias the diode, making it open visually. So there's no current flow, and of course you have no output. So it is called half wave, half only. So since it only passes half of the cycle, so it's either positive half or negative half, or it depends on the orientation of the diode. In our case, this is positive half wave rectifier. So if you reverse the diode, you will have negative half wave rectifier. Okay, so with this operation, we can say that the rectifier is a circuit that converts AC, alternating current, to DC, direct current. So we say direct since we don't have negative here, all positive. So the input, which has an alternating positive and negative, is converted to only positive. Okay, so that's why rectifier converts AC to DC. Another circuit is the full wave but center tap rectifier. So let's analyze this one. So we have our input. This time we have two inputs. Since of course we have two sources. This is center tap. And we have output as seen in this resistor. Okay, so let's analyze how this diode operates. We have positive. Take note, this one is your anode. That is positive. This is negative. Another positive. This is negative. Okay, so this one, the upper positive half cycle, goes to this diode. So it will forward bias the diode, which means you have an output, right? The behavior of this power source, if the other source is positive, the other is negative. So this negative here, okay, so this one, okay, it will reverse bias the diode. So it's like an open circuit. Of course, there's no output, right? The next cycle, the upper source will be negative. Okay, it will reverse bias the diode, right? So there's no output. But the lower power source is positive half cycle. So it will forward bias diode, allowing the current flow, and you have your output. And the cycle goes on. So another positive cycle, forward bias, this upper diode, you have an output. But the lower power source is negative cycle. So it will reverse bias this diode. So there's no output. Okay. And another cycle, we have negative. So it will reverse bias the diode, so there's no output. But the bottom power source, so it has forward bias this diode, and you have an output. So it is called full wave since there's an output in every half cycle. So it's either produced by this upper diode or this lower diode. Okay, so this is full wave. This is the waveform of a full wave. So another full wave rectifier is the bridge type. So this is the circuit of the bridge type rectifier. We can analyze this one. So we have input and we have, of course, output. Okay, as we can see in the resistor. Okay, so first cycle, positive. Okay, going through this. So you have positive. This is positive, this is negative, right? So this is positive, this is negative. So which diode will be forward bias? You have positive and you have positive. Okay, so it will forward bias this diode. But the other one will reverse. So that is open circuit equivalent. So this one is forward, which means you have output, right? So under cycle at the bottom, you have negative. So we have negative here. This one is positive, the anode. This one is cathode, negative. So this one is positive, this one is negative. Okay, negative and negative. So which means this diode is forward bias. The other is reverse bias, so open circuit. But if you notice, this diode is what? Connected to ground. So which means your output negative will be grounded. So as if there's no output. Okay, so this negative here will go to the ground. Okay. So the same concept now applies. Okay, so another cycle. So the upper terminal of our power source is negative. So we have negative here. So again, this is what? Positive, this is negative. Anode, positive, cathode, negative. Okay, negative and negative. So this one will be forward bias. The other one is reverse, right? Open circuit. But it will go straight to the ground. So your negative will go straight to the ground. So there's no output yet. But the bottom terminal of the power source is positive. So you have positive here. Okay, so this one is positive. Okay, this one is negative. So positive and positive. Okay, so it will forward bias that diode, but this one is reverse bias. So this diode will have the output. And the cycle repeats. So another positive terminal. Okay, it reverse bias. Okay, so you have output. So the bottom terminal is negative. So it will reverse bias that diode. This one will forward bias, but it will go straight to the ground. So the last cycle, another negative. Okay, reverse bias is one. This one is forward bias, but it will go to the ground. So the bottom terminal has a positive cycle. So it will reverse bias at diode. This one is will forward bias. So you have now an output. Okay, so this is how the rectifier circuit works. So we don't have any calculation yet, but on the next topic, we will have some formulas on how to calculate the DC voltage of this rectifier circuit and the frequency and some of the parameters of the rectifier circuits. Okay, so this is the end for the theory of operation of the diode. So take note of this Shurib operation since we'll be using this in our circuit analysis as we go on into this class. Okay, so this is it and see you again on the next lesson.